I'm going to answer my own question first before we kind of get to the even bigger discussion, Anthony. But I asked Ben Pickman when he was just on with us, do we think this is sustainable, or do we think this is a Caitlin Clark power peak that is going to fall back off? And I would say the answer is both. I think that there is a sustainability to women's college basketball right now that is structural, that is sound, and that it is not going anywhere. And in fact, is going to be continued because Juju Watkins and Kiki Rice, speaking of DC high school basketball, Kiki Rice, shouts out to the DC native, killing it at UCLA. Paige Beckers, we'll see. Angel didn't wind up announcing last night. She had to declare or not, but we didn't hear anything. So we still don't know. Maybe Angel Reese is back next year in college hoops. But there's so much talent and so much star power, and it is easier to develop that star power in the women's game because the age limit of the WNBA is much higher than it is at the NBA, and there's not these alternate routes that the best players in the country are going to. And the international women's game, players come here and go to college. The UConn's point guard was born in Croatia. You don't have the 19-year-old academy kid that becomes the first pick in the NBA draft, and then 5 years later you're like, oh, Luka Doncic is really that dude, huh? That's a bad dude. Those women go through the American college system mostly before they come over. So I think all of that adds up to a sustainability in the women's college game and a popularity that's going to continue to put up monster TV numbers, and people are going to care about, and people are going to have their favorite teams. I think younger generations, there's going to be a lot of young boys, nevertheless young girls, who when you ask them who their favorite player is, they're going to say Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins and down the list. But I do think this peak is higher than any other peak that we're going to see for a while because Caitlin is that unique of a star. Caitlin is her not just from a playing standpoint. She's the NCAA's all-time leader in every scoring category at this point. She's breaking somehow 3 records a night. Whatever one she hasn't hit, she's hitting them game by game. Division I records, women's records, all division records, this 3-point record, that scoring record. And oh, by the way, she led the nation in assists this year. She's just an unbelievably unique and skillful and talented player who also happens to be killing it from the marketing side, signing perfect deals, being used very well by advertisers. There is just a lot going for Caitlin Clark that makes me think that whatever number this game puts up on Friday on ESPN and whatever number, we're still waiting on the number from last night, it's going to be way over 10 million watch. Those games are going to be the record for a while. But that doesn't mean that you're going to go and have 500,000 people watching or 1 million people or even 2 million. It's just going to dip down to 8 million. It's just that Caitlin Clark is bringing in a level of casual fans that we see in all sports all the time with transcendent superstars. So that would be my answer to that question of whether or not this is a sustainable long-term thing at this level or a peak. It's both.
Yeah, and I would agree. Caitlin Clark definitely has done a lot for the women's game, but I think her and Juju sort of kind of sharing the stage, it could sort of be seen as a passing of the torch where Juju is now the one that's, bringing in a lot more casuals and growing the game in that manner. Again, she's only a freshman, so she has at least, 2 to 3 years left to, continue to grow the game and, really put her name out there. We're already seeing her in commercials. We're already seeing, her be marketed in a special way. So I think Juju could be the one that also catapults, or piggybacks off what Caitlin has already, started.
I think that's definitely true. The one thing this is not any reflection of Juju. The one thing I worry about is she's on the West Coast. And so, when it comes to watching her games night in and night out, it's one thing. I mean, how many people were watching Iowa games at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night? There were certainly some, and there's going to be a lot more watching at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night on the Big Ten Network in January than there will be watching at 10 o'clock Pacific time or 10 o'clock Eastern time on a Wednesday night on whatever network that the USC is going to, or maybe they'll be on the Big Ten Network now too. God, that's weird. Anyway, the West Coast thing always has an impact on this. from a visibility standpoint. But on the weekends, like, okay, the game's at 4 instead of 1 o'clock. And I will say, maybe that actually winds up working out. Maybe I'm actually wrong on this because, well, obviously USC's home games are going to be played late, 7 o'clock local time, 10 o'clock Eastern. If they're in the Big Ten, like, they actually will play a decent amount of games on time zones or in a time window that's more conducive to higher viewing. That's just like math and geography. That's not any reflection of Juju and her star power. That's literally the only reservation I have about her because her game, her charisma, her everything, like she's got it. Juju is also her. Yeah. In terms of the ability. And, you know, we're going to play some sound later and Real Things about how much her teammates trust her and the maturity that she's got. I think that's one thing that Caitlin has that has so benefited her. She doesn't miss when she's in front of a mic. And I think Juju's got that same thing, too, that is going to help propel her star to a super high level. The records are going to be fun to watch, too. Obviously, Juju just set the freshman scoring record, so she is on pace eventually to catch Caitlin if she can do the things that Caitlin did in years 2, 3, and 4. So that who knows? Maybe Caitlin Clark's going to smash all these records and they won't last very long. But where does she stand in terms of the all-time greats? I think is a really difficult question, and this is an unsexy answer, but it's the answer I always give on this, which is she's the GOAT of this generation. It's really hard to compare generationally. And I think she's such a unique case because there's a really good chance if South Carolina finishes this thing off that she goes through her 4 years without a national championship. And she'd still be the GOAT of this generation. She's that good and has been that impactful as a player, nevertheless, all the off-the-court stuff. But it just shows you how hard it is. And, like, she's playing at Iowa with all due respect to what Lisa Bluder's built there, a very, very good program before Caitlin was there. They've never had success like this. And I think it's hard to measure that versus Breanna Stewart, Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, who took UConn, a program that expects to win championships, and did the thing that they're expected to do. Like they couldn't overachieve. Stewie kind of did. You're not supposed to be able to win 4 in a row, and Stewie did. But I just feel like it's hard to compare someone who's doing kind of what Steph did at Davidson, taking a program that's solid and has a lot of good pieces and taking it to the absolute highest end of the sport to the blue blood of blue bloods and keeping it there over even an extended period of time, or in Stewie's case, her entire career.
But I think that's also where the debate goes because, again, you look at Sabrina Ionescu, who took a lesser-known school in Oregon and, did what she did. Or you look at Kelsey Plum and the numbers that she was able to pull up, the run that she was able to go on her senior year. Like, which of those is, like, more impressive, though? Like, the fact that Caitlin Clark is also following in their footsteps and being able to take this, lesser-known school in Iowa and, match it up against what South Carolina has built, what UConn has already established the last, 40, 50 years, however long Gino's been doing this.
It hasn't been that long. It's been since the 90s.
Maybe like 25, 30.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I don't know, like, which one is, like, more impressive? I
think in that category, Caitlin's the queen of that, right? Yeah. Like, her career is better than Sabrina. It's better than Kelsey, and that's not a shot at those two. They were number 1 overall picks, and deservedly so, and, have had moderately to very successful. We'll see what Sabrina can continue to grow into, W careers. But, like, Caitlin's better than KP was at Washington, and she's better than Sabrina was at Oregon. So, like, in the non-UConn, non-Tennessee category, because then you add in Candace Parker and some of the other great players that have played there, Shamiqua Holdsqua, like, you go down the list, and there's great players. I mean, back in the day, USC, powerhouse, had a bunch of great players, Cheryl Miller, Lisa Leslie, on down the list. Like, obviously, you go back before it was D1, and they're playing whatever the old version was, and, like, I've told this story before. I coached at Nancy Lieberman's basketball camp back a decade ago, and Nancy Lieberman's out there at 50 years old running around with a bunch of 20-somethings, and she was still the best player on the floor. She wiped our, what's all over the place. I've never played with a player who had vision like that, and I cannot imagine when she was in her teens and 20s, like, how good she was as a college basketball player at the peak of her athleticism, at the peak of her powers. And God forbid she had the resources that are available in the modern game. So, like, it's just impossible to compare like Nancy's era to a decade later and Cheryl Miller, who put up just preposterous numbers, Lisa Leslie, Rebecca Lobo, Dawn Staley, like on down the list. I think when you look at modern players and you look at that group that's non-powerhouse, who are the players that have elevated a program, I think Caitlin's the best one of the group. How that compares to Maya Moore, how that compares to Stewie, how that compares to DT and Sue Bird, I think it's a lot harder comparison. Obviously, Candace Parker, same thing at Tennessee. But I'd say Caitlin she's in the mix, which is all you can ever ask to be. There's never, ever going to be definitive GOATs in any sport. Outside of like Jerry Rice is the best receiver of all time. His numbers are so far better than everyone else, it's not even close. Wayne Gretzky is the best hockey player of all time. Those two live on like different stratospheres than everyone else statistically, and it is just impossible to say that anyone has reached their levels of dominance at their specific tasks. Outside of that, I think all you can ask is to be in the conversation, and Caitlin is definitively in that conversation.
I think a championship will stamp her, but look, that remains to be seen. I think she needs. I think she needs one really bad because everybody else at the top of the list, multiple-time champion.
Dog, if she can do it though, like I think that does. There are people that will make the argument that puts her ahead of. Her one will be more.
That would be a crazy run.
Well, especially if she drops like 40 and 40 in the next two games and has this 40, 15, and 10 final to knock off South Carolina and end an unbeaten season. Like, it would certainly go down as the greatest single season of all time.
Greatest single season, greatest run. Because again, knocking off this South Carolina team, and her team was the last team to beat them. So,
right,
I think it would be a full circle moment kind of thing.
And God, they're like a couple questionable charge calls last year in that title game away from going back to back. Like that's crazy. We'll take a couple calls on this next. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.